Welcome to the Eat This Book podcast. I'm Michael Whitworth. Each day we take a small piece of scripture and we sit with it. Not a quick snack that disappears before lunch, not a chore you check off of a list, but rather a meal meant to be savored. So pull up a chair. Let's eat. A good surgeon doesn't soften the diagnosis. When the scan shows something dangerous, the patient needs to hear the truth, plainly, without hedging. But the same surgeon who delivers the hard news is also the one who sits down afterward, looks the patient in the eye, and says, "Here's why I think we can beat this." The honesty about the danger and the confidence about the outcome are not in tension. They come from the same person, in the same conversation, because that person actually cares whether the patient lives. The writer of Hebrews has just delivered the most frightening words in the letter: the thorny field, the impossible restoration, the fire. And now, without missing a beat, he sits down beside his audience and changes his tone entirely. Though we speak in this way, yet in your case, beloved, we feel sure of better things, things that belong to salvation. The first word that lands is beloved. After 3 chapters of warning, drifting, hardening, dullness, the terrifying possibility of falling away, the writer reaches for a word of tenderness. This is the only time in the entire letter he uses it. He has been firm, he has been severe at times, and now he wants his audience to know that everything he said has come from a place of deep affection. The warnings were never the words of an enemy, they were the words of someone who loves them too much to stay silent. And then, we feel sure of better things. The Greek behind feel sure means to be persuaded, convinced, or confident. The writer is not expressing a vague hope, he's expressing a settled conviction. Whatever he just described in the previous passage, the field bears thorns, the soil that drinks the rain and produces nothing, he does not believe that that's where his audience is headed. In your case, he distinguishes them from the terrible example he just painted. The warning was real, but the warning was a guardrail, not a verdict. This is the genius of the passage. The writer refuses to let the severity of his warning collapse into despair. He sounds the alarm loud enough to wake the drifting, and then immediately assures them that he expects them to wake. Fear without hope produces paralysis. Hope without fear produces complacency. The writer holds both, because both are true, and because the people he loves need both. For God is not unjust so as to overlook your work and the love that you have shown for his name in serving the saints as you still do. Here the writer grounds his confidence, not in his audience's strength, not in their theological precision, but in God's character. God is not unjust. He does not forget. He does not overlook the work his people have done. And the writer points to something concrete: their love shown in service to other believers, demonstrated over time and still continuing in the present. Notice what the writer remembers about them. Not their doctrinal sophistication. He just spent the chapter calling them dull of hearing. Not their spiritual maturity. He just told them they need milk. What he remembers, and what he says God remembers, is their love. The practical, unglamorous, day after day work of serving other people in the name of Christ. The meals brought, the visits made, the burdens carried. The quiet, repeated acts of care that no one applauds and most people forget. But God doesn't forget. The writer makes a striking claim. It would be unjust for God to overlook this. Not merely unkind, but unjust. As though God has bound himself by his own faithfulness to remember what his people do in love. Your acts of service are not dropped into a void. They are recorded by a God who considers it a matter of justice to remember them. The casserole you brought to a grieving family 8 years ago, the ride you gave, the prayer you whispered over someone who never knew, God saw, God remembers, and he is not unjust. And we desire each of you to show the same earnestness to have the full assurance of hope until the end. Now the writer turns from what they've done to what he longs for them to keep doing. He wants each one of them, each one, not the group in general, but every individual, to press on with the same diligence they've already shown in love. The goal is the full assurance of hope until the end. Not a flickering hope, not a hope that wavers with circumstances, but full assurance. The settled, anchored confidence that holds all the way to the finish line. And notice the connection. They have already shown earnestness in love. The writer wants that same earnestness applied to hope. The diligence is already in them. It's evident in how they serve. He's asking them to direct that same energy toward holding on to their confidence in God. You already know how to work hard at love. Work that hard at hope, so that you may not be sluggish, but imitators of those who through faith and patience inherit the promises. The word sluggish is the same word translated dull back in chapter 5, dull of hearing. The writer circles back to his diagnosis. He doesn't want them to stay sluggish. He wants them to become imitators, people who follow a pattern, who walk in the footsteps of those who have gone before. The pattern he points to is faith and patience. Two things: faith, trusting God's promises, and patience. The Greek means long-suffering, endurance under pressure, the capacity to wait without giving up. These are the twin qualities of everyone who has ever inherited God's promises. They believed and they waited. They trusted and they endured. The inheritance didn't come quickly or easily. It came to people who held on. The writer is about to give them an example of exactly this. Abraham, who waited decades for a promise and received it. But here at the close of the warning section, he plants the principle. The promises belong to those who combine faith with patience. Not faith alone, as though belief without endurance were enough. Not patience alone, as though gritting your teeth could substitute for trust. Faith and patience. Believing while waiting, trusting through the delay. Here's what I think we should savor from this passage. First, warning and confidence come from the same love. The writer who described the thorny field is the writer who calls them beloved. He is not two different people. The severity and the tenderness flow from the same source, a love that refuses both to flatter and to abandon. If someone only ever warns you, they may not love you. If someone only ever comforts you, they may not love you either. Real love does both, because real love tells the truth and stays. Second, God remembers your love. In a world where most acts of service vanish unnoticed, the writer insists that God considers it a matter of justice to remember yours. You may feel like your quiet faithfulness counts for nothing, that the years of showing up, serving, caring, carrying have disappeared into the void. They haven't. God is not unjust. He sees and he remembers and he does not forget. Third, faith and patience inherit the promises. The two belong together. Faith without patience burns out when the answer is delayed. Patience without faith curdles into mere endurance, teeth gritted against a God you no longer trust. But faith and patience together, believing while you wait, trusting through the delay, that is the well-worn path that every inheritor of God's promises has walked. If the previous passage frightened you, if you've been carrying the weight of impossible to restore and wondering whether you're the thorny field, hear the very next word the writer speaks. Beloved. He moved from the warning to the tenderness in a single breath. The fear was meant to wake you, not bury you. And the fact that you're still listening, still concerned, still here, is exactly the kind of evidence that makes the writer say better things about people like you. If you feel like your service has gone unnoticed, years of quiet faithfulness that no one has thanked you for, no one has remembered, no one has seen, this passage says God saw all of it. He calls it your love, shown for his name. And he considers it a matter of justice, not just kindness, to remember it. Your work is not lost, it is recorded. If you're exhausted in your serving, still doing the work but running on empty, wondering how much longer you can keep showing up, the writer doesn't tell you to do more. He tells you to take the same earnestness you've poured into love and pour some of it into hope. Sometimes the way forward isn't more service, it's a renewed grip on the promise that makes the service make sense. If you're stuck in the waiting, a promise you believed years ago that still hasn't come, a prayer still unanswered, a future still unseen, this passage names what you need, faith and patience, not one or the other. The waiting itself is not a sign that God has forgotten. It's the very terrain where the promises are inherited. The people who received them are not the ones who waited the least, they're the ones who believed the longest. And if you've been sluggish, and you know it, the writer doesn't leave you there. He calls you to imitate the ones who finished. The pattern exists. The path is worn smooth by everyone who has walked it before you. You don't have to invent the way forward, you just have to follow the footprints. Next time on Eat This Book, what do you hold on to when the storm won't stop? Hebrews points to something stronger than circumstances, stronger than feelings, even stronger than our own grip. Join me as we discover the hope that serves as an anchor for the soul, fixed behind the curtain where Jesus has already gone ahead. Thanks for reading with me. Until next time, may the Word dwell in you richly.